Yeah. Yes, sir.
This my position now because of you. Thank you.
It's a very wide angle, so you can go on your knees, and then Mr. Mallya, would you like to...
Hello? Sonia, can you hear me?
One at a time, please. Ask your question.
Mr. Mallya, quick question about your meeting with Mr. Jaitley. You mentioned, one second, you mentioned that you would be leaving for London. Would you clarify what that meeting was and what transpired?
I'm afraid this is a controversy created by my friends in the media. I was standing here during the lunch break and I happened to answer a question on the circumstances under which I flew out. I said I happened to meet Mr. Jaitley in Parliament and I told him that I was leaving for London and that I want to settle with the banks and would he please facilitate discussions. I did not have any formal meeting scheduled with him. I met him often enough in Parliament, in the House and in Central Hall, and I have expressed to him my willingness to settle on many an occasion. And I don't understand what this controversy is all about.
Just when you said you were leaving for London, was this perhaps for a visit to London or to leave in the circumstances in which you did, sir?
I have clarified to you before. I flew to London because I was on my way to Geneva, where I had a long scheduled meeting of the World Motorsports Council. Those were the circumstances under which I left India. I don't believe that it is fair on anybody to create a controversy over this issue.
What did Mr. Jaitley say when you told him you're leaving for London, sir?
Nothing. I wouldn't expect him to say anything.
And when you
what was the duration of the meeting?
Well, he
Can
claims
you just
that you
explain
did tell him about London.
I don't know what Mr. Jaitley has or has not said.
Down a bit, please.
I don't know what has prompted him to say anything if he has said it. I've been in court, as you have yourself seen. So that's it.
The question is, sir, but if you had offered to settle matters and if Mr. Jaitley was told by you that you were going to London, how did the government let you leave London? That's the big question.
If you think that you're going to try and make some sensational news capital out of a perfectly innocent statement that I made, that I told Mr. Jaitley that I was going to London, that was it. No further conversation.
Did you meet? You have maintained that this is a witch
story
hunt.
when none exists.
Did you meet any other BJP leader, sir? Did you meet any other BJP leader before you left for London?
Over a period of time, I have met many colleagues in Parliament and expressed to them my desire to settle with the banks. I don't believe I owe you any further details.
Mr.
What
Jaitley,
last question, Mr. Mallya?
did anybody tip you off? Did anybody say you better run because they're coming after you?
Please, guys, please move.
Because that's the allegation that's being made,
pushing.
that you were tipped off and somebody told you that you better run.
Well, I can confirm to you nobody tipped me off. There was no need to run. And the allegations are media-created allegations, unfortunately.
Did you tell Mr. Jaitley that you would come back after you leave for London? Did you tell him you'd come back and settle matters, sir?
I am not going to answer questions that facilitates yet another controversy. As it is a completely innocent statement made by me during lunch about my having told Mr. Jaitley that I was leaving for London has created this totally unnecessary controversy. And I'm sorry, but I'm not going to act as fodder for more.
But Mr. Mallya, let's talk about
When you had ready to settle, then why do you think that offer has not been accepted?
Mr. Mallya, on the
Despite having gone to Mr. Jaitley as well.
May I ask you what you're hoping for on the 10th of December?
A judgment.
And the judge said that she would focus on the prima facie case. So does that concern you, Mr. Mallya?
I think that's what the judge should do.
And not that of prison conditions, not that of claims of honesty or dishonesty by both sides.
Are you hoping
We
the judge...
have argued our case. I think you heard the arguments. The prosecution have argued their case. Now it's up to the judge to decide. Simple.
Mr. Mallya,
Has
will
the
you
jail
appeal
video
if
weakened
you...
your... weakened
Mallya,
your
will you-
appeal?
will you-
Are you a
what
little
will be your
worried
next
about the
step?
jail
Mr.
video?
Mallya, Mr.
Mr.
Jaitley
Mallya.
has said that you rushed up to him in the parliament. Is that true? That you
So one of
paced
the
up to
arguments
him in
you
the
made were
parliament.
about
Is that
jail...
true?
I'm sorry. I do not know what Mr. Jaitley has said.
He said it was
I
not an
have-
appointment that he
And you
gave out to
accosted
you.
him on the gates of Parliament.
I don't know what Mr. Jaitley has said. And I don't see why I need to take your word for it.
But was it a scheduled meeting?
No. There was no need for any scheduled meeting ever because we were in Parliament together. I used to bump into him all the time. That's it.
Mr. Mallya, one of the
Vijay,
arguments
what did
your
he say
counsel
to you
made
in
against
reply?
extradition were jail conditions.
What did he say?
Has the jail video defeated that argument?
Sir, did you try and meet any other leader as well? Try to put your point across?
You have
I want this mic to show.
listened to the arguments yourself. Draw your own conclusions.
Sir, did you also
Mr. Mallya, not once has it been
I've
In
answered
case
that.
you're extradited.
I've answered that.
Mr. Mallya, your proposal to pay off the Indian banks has not been discussed in the court. Why do you think so, sir? Why hasn't it been proposed in the court, and why hasn't that been taken into consideration here?
Did I not tell you at lunchtime that this matter is coming up before the Karnataka High Court on the 18th of September?
But sir, your attorneys have not mentioned it during the hearings here. Shouldn't they have?
This is an extradition hearing, not a settlement hearing.
Mr. Mallya, Rahul Gandhi was here about a fortnight ago and he said that you met senior BJP leaders before you left for London from India. Is there any truth in that?
Now I understand. Now I understand
This
the
is
root
what
of
happened.
your question.
On the 25th of
You are
August, Mr.
trying
Mallya,
to create a sensational story out of what Mr. Gandhi may or may not have said, and a innocuous statement by me at lunchtime today that I said I told Mr. Jaitley that I was going to London. And now you're trying to play both sides and create a storm in a teacup. Well, you're welcome to that, but I'm not going to comment on it further because I haven't even seen what Mr. Jaitley has said.
What was the nature of the meeting though? Just explain to us exactly how long were you with him? Was it in a corridor? Was it in a public place? Did you offer him documents? Did you show him your documents, Vijay? Was it a casual meeting? Did you buttonhole him? Did you just grab him? Politicians to get you out of jail here.
I've already answered that.
Anybody from the RBI or the Department of Finance or Health?
This is quite a precarious crossing, but I think we should wait. Have you thought about whatever the event may be post 10th of December, whatever way the verdict may go, Mr. Mallya?
Do I have your permission?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
What are we expecting on December the 10th? Do you think that's it? Is that the end game? Is that your understanding?
What could be your next step, Mr. Mallya, whatever the verdict may be?
Is that the end game? Will that be the verdict?
Are you hoping for a favourable verdict?
Let us
Are you confident of one?
meet on the 10th of December.
Mr. Mallya, what could be your next step, whatever the verdict may be after 10th of December?
I want you to come back to India.
The extradition is...
We'll read
Are
the
you willing
judgment.
to make that offer?
Okay. And would you consider pursuing further legal action if
course.
it doesn't go in your way?
Very premature to decide anything. Let's meet on the 10th of December, and depending on the judgment, we'll talk about further steps.
Will you be bailed? Are you afraid you perhaps won't be bailed?
All right, Vijay Mallya, they're exiting the court, the Westminster Magistrates Court in central London. He spoke with the press over the lunch break, when he seemingly stepped out for a cigarette and then made a comment to the press that sent the entire country into a tizzy, where he basically said that he had met with Arun Jaitley before he, left for London, but had then become his sort of an escape to London. And he had offered a settlement, and that's all he said at that time. Now, this turned into an entire tizzy in India about whether or not Vijay Mallya had been tipped off to leave at that point, and whether or not Arun Jaitley was in fact in the know about the fact that Vijay Mallya was leaving the country. Now, Mr. Jaitley has come out since then, the finance minister, and made a statement saying that there was no formal meeting. Vijay Mallya was never given an appointment. He, in fact, ran up to Arun Jaitley, according to the finance minister, and in Parliament, and asked him very quickly if he can make an offer of settlement. And according to the finance minister, he turned around and said, "You'll have to make that offer to the banks." Now, this particular story is sort of been matched by Vijay Mallya just now when he stepped out, and we heard him live. But he did say there was no formal appointment between him and the finance minister. They were colleagues in Parliament, and hence they did not need to take a formal appointment. And he did say he has expressed his wish to settle, and he did tell Mr. Jaitley he was leaving for London after. Now, here's the question really. If Vijay Mallya claims that there is an offer to settle in the Karnataka High Court, which will be taken up in a settlement hearing on the 18th of September, should we as a country take him up on the offer and settle with Vijay Mallya, or should we be prosecuting him? Joining me on the show, Vipin Malik, former Director of the RBI, Sanjay Hegde, Senior Advocate with the Supreme Court, Shama Mohammed with the Congress Party, Arya Masundaram is a Senior Advocate with the Supreme Court, Vaibhav Agarwal with the BJP. I welcome all of you to this conversation. I apologize for keeping you waiting when we cut across to London there for that live update. Mr. Sundaram, my first question is to you. On one hand, there is a lot of money hanging in the balance. Vijay Mallya owes the country, or the country's banks, 9,000 crore rupees. He claims that he's placed assets worth 15,000 crore rupees before the Karnataka High Court. Should we be taking his money, or should we be at this point focused on prosecuting him?
Look, the fact of the matter is that I think Mr. Mallya has been coming up with claims of making offers for settlement for a very long period of time. In fact, many of these offers were found to be quite hollow. For example, he claimed his asset base included 8,000 crores worth of brand value of Kingfisher. Now, the question is, what is he offering as a settlement? Is he offering hard cash right down? Now, that is one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is the charge of the government of India, and especially as projected before the English court for the purpose of extradition. Obviously, you cannot get an extradition merely on the ground that he went into a commercial venture which failed and owes money. The whole reason is that they claimed that there was money laundering involved, that there was siphoning of money involved, that various other illegalities were committed. Now, the moment we turn around and say he will not be prosecuted if he pays, well, it's really a case of saying, yes, you can compromise your the violation, the crime, and it can be compounded by your paying back the money. Now, that is basically leads to another question. It leads to a question that a person commits a crime, and after committing the crime, will say that now I will compensate the other party and therefore don't prosecute me anymore. I don't know whether it is a good precedence to set. I don't believe it's a good precedence to set if the government of India on the one hand has been insisting on extradition on the basis of criminal acts involving money laundering, and that's the only basis of claiming extradition. At the same time, you're willing to say, all right, you can money launder, you can commit criminal acts as long as we get paid back. At best, I think, if the settlement can be arrived at, that he pays back the money, to an extent, any punishment against him, any penalties against him can be mitigated and can be reduced and mitigated. I think, but to say that he will be absolved from prosecution is really to say that you can buy your way out of prosecution for a criminal act. And I don't know whether that's a good precedence.
Sanjay Hegde, same question. Do you believe that we should be considering his settlement offer at all?
See, that it all depends on your priorities. What is the priority of the government of India? Is the man the priority? Is putting him in jail the priority? Or is it getting back public money which the bankers have so improvidently let out? I agree with Mr. Sundaram when he says that there is a moral hazard in this, in as much as when you have alleged in a foreign court that this man is guilty of money laundering, once that is treated as a criminal act, to compound that criminal act upon this resolution of the underlying commercial dispute would set a dangerous precedent. I mean, while Mallya may be the first big show target, all of us are aware that he may not be the last.
Yes.
Whatever you do in Mallya's case might then be cited as a precedent in respect of Choksi, Modi, or whoever is the next person to find some exotic isle or the other and take refuge in those courts. Even if you are to ultimately decide that your priority is money, the entire transaction of settlement will have to be carefully orchestrated and choreographed. I also agree with Mr. Sundaram that it is no sense saying that I have so many thousand crores worth of assets, most of which, even if auctioned, may not actually yield the desired amount. Cash on the nail is a different prospect. An indefinite asset capable of liquidation and being transformed into money is an entirely different one.
Right, very clearly put, Vaibhav.
What Vijay Mallya's statement today has done.
Yes. So,
no, just to
conclude, go ahead, Mr. Hegde. I apologize.
Vijay Mallya's statements today have muddied the waters of any settlement.
Right. Vaibhav Agarwal.
Because once you put the finance minister on the ball,
yes,
then I don't think anything can work.
Absolutely. Vaibhav Agarwal, what is the government's stand at this point on Vijay Mallya?
Faye, what I can say is that what is the government agencies doing or how they're looking at it, I've already said that before. It's above my pay grade, so I won't be able to comment on that. But as far as the situation is concerned, it is very simple. You know, Mr. Arun Jaitley is a very, very senior leader. He's not just a leading, noted, accomplished lawyer, but he's also a man with very high level of integrities. I have known him personally for a very long time. So casting aspersions on the very man sitting in the very office is a dicey game. Mr. Mallya has a lot to explain, and if he's explaining it rightly, then it should be looked at it in the same light. It should not be used as a fodder for running amok with the information that has been shared in the public. It should be within reasonable framework. That is point number one. Point number two, both the learned counsel, Sanjay ji and Mr. Sundaram, you know, I've seen them I've respected them, and as a junior, I'm junior to them, and I am no two qualms about accepting it. The way I see it is that there are two sides to the entire transaction. One is a civil matter wherein the money has to be returned. So what we should also do is we should focus on getting the money in definitely. On the same side, and the law looks at it across the gamut of sections that we apply to any case, and we always match the criminalities or the civil violations that are there. And if there are some in the due course in the process of law, then I think he should be punished. And as far as the matter of precedence is concerned, that both the senior counsels have demonstrated, yes, it is a matter of concern, and the precedence should be that A, nobody should be able to run away with the Indian taxpayers' money by defrauding the country, and B, the people should be brought to the book. Very simply said. How else can I actually describe this?
But hang on, Vaibhav Agarwal, if we bring him to the book, then we're not going to get any of the money back. We should be very clear about that. How will you get the money back?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. So having said that, let's give it an ideal situation block. If Mr. Vijay Mallya, Dr. Vijay Mallya is a very responsible, old, seasoned, family-oriented businessman. You know, his family has done business in India for many, many long years. You know, so he's a very well-settled individual. So if I was to look at an ideal situation, and if he's coming back and saying that, okay, I'm offering the settlement to, back, and Sanjay ji has a very valid point saying whether that amount is there or not, and I know that when the papers of the properties or anything else, cash, etc., that comes to the court, the court has the ways, means, and the resources to ascertain whether that will equal the value or not. So yes, money has to be recovered. Ideal situation, if he's saying that I'm willing to return the money back, so return the money back, and then we will, if there are other criminal and violations, there is no way to pardon anyone for their wrongdoings, for sure, whether they are civil or criminal. So it has to go hand in hand, no doubt about that.
Okay, Vaibhav Agarwal, I've listened to you talk now for 2 minutes and I still don't know what you said exactly. So you're saying you're willing to take his money, but you will still prosecute him. Why would he give you his money then in that case? I don't really understand.
Well, so there are, in a court of law, there are always two situations. One is a civil matter. When a civil matter is there, that is a give and take in terms of the financial matters. Financial matters most likely, like a bad loan or something like that, are civil matters of nature and where money recovery has to be performed. So money has to come back. It is not a byproduct, it is the main product.
Okay, let me open this up right now. Let me open this up. I know that Shama Muhammad would want to respond.
Whether there is criminality in the way amassing that wealth or not.
All right, Shama Muhammad, go ahead please. Sure. From the Congress party, Shama Muhammad.
So, yeah, so I'm not a lawyer like all the panelists here. I'm a doctor. But I just wanted to bring out a couple of points to Mr. Vaibhav, is that the CBI filed a charge sheet against Mr. Mallya in July 2015, criminal charges for money, fraudulent activities and diversion of funds and financial irregularities. These were the charges against him. That was in July 2015. The SEBI was investigating him. Let me finish, please. I did not interrupt you. The SEBI was investigating him. The ED was investigating him. The SFIO was also, he was under investigation that he's a defaulter. Now, there was a lookout notice for him, but after some time, this lookout notice was taken off. We do not know why. You have to know that the lookout notice can only be given by the Home Ministry, and if it has to be taken out, it has to be done also through the high level in the government of India, and that is either they are complicit in it or they have been negligent. Now, the point number two is in February 28th, 2016, the banks, there were 117 consortium of banks involved in this. They were told to go to court against this defaulter, but they go to court only on 5th of March. And by 2nd of March, Mr. Mallya has gone from this country. Now, my question is, and the lookout notice was not there at this point of time. That is what we come to know. My question is, if the finance minister knew that this man is a defaulter, the CBI has filed charges against him. He has not been arrested when the charges were filed. His passport was not impounded. Why did Mr. Jaitley not tell anyone that, you know what, Mr. Mallya is telling me that he's leaving for London, we need to stop him? What was the immigration doing out there? Of course, the government knew exactly when he was leaving. Nothing was done. Then, again, when was the extradition notice?
All right, fair enough. All right. So you are saying that Arun Jaitley, Mr. Arun Jaitley let him escape from the country.
Also, one more point. Let me finish. Of course, and also in 2016 September, they waived off 1,200 crores of Mr. Mallya, and also many transactions happened with Diageo. Around 40 million was paid to this. $40 million was paid in an offshore account in February 2016, but nothing. So what that there is a banking section in the finance department.
All right, you said one point, Shama Muhammad. One second. I have to give other people an option to respond to you.
This is not a lie by Mr. Mallya.
Okay, I have to give other people an option to respond to you. Vipin Malik, former director of the RBI. Vipin Malik, obviously, first of all...
You allow 2 minutes.
Okay, I just want to make this very clear to my panelists. Everybody will get an opportunity to speak. This is not an unfair show, but please don't get upset because you think someone was given more opportunity than you were. Mr. Vipin Malik, former director of the RBI. Mr. Malik, here's my question. Obviously, it was a combination of corruption and complacency that allowed Mr. Mallya to borrow 9,000 crore rupees from this country and then leave the country. But do you believe he was tipped off, or someone turned a blind eye to let him get away?
Well, I don't think so that he has been allowed to go. I think it was just a chance that he flew, and the government never realized that this man will never come back. Let me give you the facts of the case, because the facts of the case has probably not been disclosed. You see, he had a United Breweries and United Holdings. He created from that a Kingfisher Limited. Then there were related companies and non-related companies. What he did was, in United Breweries and United Holdings, he borrowed funds because those companies had the assets. From United Holdings and United Breweries, he transferred the money to related parties and to non-related parties, either as a loans or as a overpriced, as a equity which was overvalued. From that money to the related and non-related, he transferred the money to Kingfisher. And in the Kingfisher, there was a huge loss, as is happening in the Air India. So he could not recover that money. So basically what has happened is, the money which he raised from the banking was on the security of the United Holdings and United Breweries through related and non-related parties, and which was lost in the airline, number one. But these were the transactions. But there are so much of violations of SEBI, violations of Companies Act, violations of Labour Law, violations of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. All sort of violations he did, as if the law was not applicable to him. So not only the money was transferred from one bank to the other, from one company to the other, but all those violations were also done. But definitely the banking sector is also accountable for this, because when the money was being transferred from one account to the other or one bank to the other, they should have seen the end use of the money. So I will not give any benefit of doubt to bankers. They are definitely have a knowledge of that, and they should not go scot-free.
Okay, now coming back to what Shama Mohammed said, Vaibhav Agarwal, I know you want to respond. Shama Mohammed said that obviously someone had tipped off Vijay Mallya, which is why he knew to get out of the country 2 days before the banks went to the courts. What's your response to that?
Exactly. So Faye, this clearly shows that since Dr. Shama Mohammed is pointing out and casting aspersions on the role of the finance minister, you have to understand that the finance minister has been a member of the parliament for so many years. And there are 730 members of parliament, out of which about 35% are having criminal accusations on them. Yeah, I mean, they all meet in one program or the other, and we cannot start casting aspersions on saying that somebody had tipped him off. And understand that Arunji is a very quiet person. Anyone who knows him personally he's a very quiet person. He does not even look at you when he walks. He looks down when he walks. That's his body language. So he's not. I mean, it clearly shows that Congress, because they do not have any other issues to fight with on any other grounds to fight with Bharatiya Janata Party and the ruling dispensation right now, because they have no allegations whatsoever of corruption on this government. It's a clean government. So they're using this opportunity on a political platform to actually use it as fodder for their own benefit, for their own narrative, which is any which way is going to backfire to them in the long run, because our government neither interferes in any of the agency's work, nor nor is complacent about having people being brought to the book. And as I said, we are very careful in understanding that there are two aspects that are in front of us. A, if there is a fraudulent transaction, we should be able to get the money back, definitely. And B, definitely if there is a fraudulent transaction and the money that has been siphoned off is a byproduct, the law looks at it very clearly that the punishments will happen on both sides. The penalty, the punishment, and the money back.
Right.
So there are no political aspersions on this. And doubting the finance minister at this juncture, where India is the third largest economy in the world. India has seen so much, the Asian Development Bank, India has chaired that, and so on and so forth. I think hats off to the finance minister. Even after going through so much of illness, Arunji has managed to lead the country from the front. Not 1 minute he has slept in the hospital also.
No, one second.
It is very sad.
Vaibhav Agarwal, stay on point, please. Let's not discuss anything personal about the finance minister. Shama Mohammed wants to respond, but then I want to bring in the rest of my panel. I'm sure Arima Sundaram has a point to make. Shama, very quickly, please.
See, I just want to say one thing. Now, Vaibhav Agarwal was going on for some time. You did not interrupt him. Please do not interrupt me. My question to Mr. Vaibhav Agarwal is, when the CBI has filed charges, why did you not arrest him? There is the SFIO, there is the ED. All of them have, is on top of them. You did not arrest him. You did not impound his passport. You let him leave, and then you're spending again taxpayers' money for this extradition process. And then you're saying, don't cast aspersions on the finance minister. It's Mr. Mallya who's saying, it's not the Congress party today. It's Mr. Mallya clearly saying that, I was there, I spoke to him, I told him I was leaving for London. Just like Mr. Modi was in Davos in a photograph with the Prime Minister of India, and that time you keep coming and saying, he was just there and the photograph happened. So the Prime Minister does not have any sort of security. Anybody can just go and take a photograph. Even both Mr. Modi and Choksi left the country 20 days before the lookout notice. Both of them was the same thing. So if we had such a case with Mr. Mallya, why didn't you prevent Mr. Modi and Mr. Choksi from leaving then? Give me the answers to that. The same thing happened. They've taken our money and got out of this country. You were supposed to get black money inside. But what has happened is they're taking all our taxpayers' money and leaving this country.
Right.
That is what is happening.
Sundaram.
And then you're spending extra money for extradition, which is again our money. Okay. So you need to answer a lot of things today. Not casting aspersion. It is the truth.
Okay. Arima Sundaram, please. Go ahead.
Look, Faye, the way I look at it, here is a person who has been charged I'm saying, or is being accused by the Indian government of having really involved himself in criminal activities of the nature serious enough to warrant extradition proceedings. Don't forget, England does not entertain extradition proceedings unless it is in the nature of a crime which they are willing to believe is serious enough to allow extradition. Now, the Indian government has placed before the court evidence, according to the Indian government, sufficient to establish prima facie commission of serious offences. Now, these offences, if it was purely commercial, people borrow money from banks, commercially they fail, thereafter they're not able to pay back. It will be a sad day, in fact, if all these people are put into jail, because then nobody will be willing to start a company, nobody will be willing to do anything. But in Mallya's case, the charges are he's siphoned money, he's laundered money. It's much more serious. Public money has been laundered by him. In such a circumstance, I do not see where this question of a pardon comes in, or saying we won't prosecute. And secondly, what is he going to settle with? If he has assets to settle, those assets will anyway be frozen. Today, we have orders saying, and we claim there's about $1 billion of assets which have been frozen, which have been now seized. Now, this is the claim that is being made. Now, if Mallya is going to settle, he's going to settle from the assets he has. Equally, when you take action to recover your monies, you will seize those very same assets. Mm-hmm. So the recovery of money will come from the very same assets which Mallya says he's going to give to settle. So go ahead, seize those assets, and at the same time go ahead and prosecute him. Otherwise, everything that we have been saying in the English court is completely watered down, is not true at all. Because if we feel that it's only a question of money, then what were we arguing before the English court? So I don't think it's as simple as that. And as to the other part, as to how he left the country, I think it's very unfair to cast aspersions on any individual people, and especially people at the level of ministers. Because let's be very frank about it. Your banker tips you off in a thing like this and says, look here, this information has come. I think they're going to be taking action against you very soon. And usually that is exactly what happens. So I don't think the fact that he left the country 2 days later is complicity at the highest levels. In fact, according to me, it happens because of tip-offs at the lowest levels. And that's how it normally happens. But the fact is, yes, we should have been more vigilant. Yes, there should have been a lookout notice. Yes, we should have been aware that at this time the man may try to leave because he has the resources to live abroad, and stopped him. And therefore we were lax. But more than that, I wouldn't say it's a case of casting aspersions. And I think even Mallya's second interview seemed to indicate that what he had said earlier should not have been taken the way it was.
Yes.
And it now appears that in the afternoon what he said was an innuendo. Without saying anything, he tried to indicate, oh, that I am powerful enough that I can speak to the finance minister. It's not that serious an issue. It is something that can be settled. I think it went with that kind of bravado.
Yes.
Seeing what his second interview, he has just tried to clarify and say that there was no formal meeting, etc.
Yeah.
Well, we also have Neetu Shukla on the phone line who's called us. She's a former employee of Kingfisher. Neetu Shukla, go ahead, please.
I don't think we are here to establish whether or not there was criminality involved in what Vijay Mallya did. I think if we weren't sure about the criminality, we wouldn't have gone on guns blazing trying to
extradite him, yes,
for an extradition treaty implementation with the UK. So the fact that there is criminality involved is a given in this case. The only thing that needs to be done is to prove that. So how are we debating whether or not when he comes down to India, are we going to prosecute him or whether we'll just take the money and leave him? Is that the message India wants to give to the world at large when India is trying to be a global player? You can come to my country, you can fleece me, you can cheat me, you can insult me by not coming to the court.
Excellent.
You just need to throw money on my face and I will let you go. The man has to face charges. He has to go to jail. He's done criminal acts. How can we be so forgiving? And how can money allow us to not jail the person? And even now, when we talk of recoveries and we talk of debts, why are we only talking about the debts that he owes to the bank? I am a tax-paying person, citizen of this country. I have paid taxes. I come under the ambit of law. I deserve the protection of law. I've had people coming around and telling me things like you worked for a private entity and the government is not responsible for the money that entity owes you. How is it that the government is not responsible for the money that the entity owes me when the government comes to me, takes my taxes and assures me police protection and laws of the country?
Absolutely. Sanjay Hegde, Neetu is absolutely right. There is no question of criminality. And secondly, it's not just the banks who were wronged here. Thousands of employees were not paid their salaries. Some of this resulted in depression and suicide as well. There has to be accountability.
Well, accountability certainly has to be. There is, prosecutions have been launched. The question is, how do you bring him before the Indian courts? And that's why the extradition has been launched. Equally well, there is the financial aspect of it. So, as I said in the beginning, it's a question of priorities. However, I want to backtrack a bit and go to that question about him leaving the country and his conversation with the finance minister. This brings up that classic question in Watergate. What did the finance minister know and when did he know it? When an MP who is heavily in debt comes to you, says, I want to settle, and he also tells you that I am leaving for London. Did alarm bells at that stage ring or not? If they did not ring, why did they not ring? These are the questions that somebody will definitely be asking. And what is the level of scrutiny of these transactions that a finance minister is supposed to be in the know? There is, of course, the larger doctrine of ministerial responsibility, where a minister is responsible for everything that happens within the department. But I'm not going there for the moment. The question is that in 2016, everybody knew that Vijay Mallya was seriously financially stressed. The government had also issued a lookout notice. For some reason, that lookout notice mysteriously does not materialize. In such circumstances, when he walks up in the corridors of Parliament and tells the finance minister, look, I want to settle. He also says that I'm off to London. Now, should a smart finance minister not have put 2 and 2 together at that point of time? This is a question which troubles me. I don't know what the other panelists have to say about it.
Vaibhav Agarwal, should that statement of I'm leaving for London, I'd prefer to settle,
Wait, I'll tell you what.
have worried the finance minister?
Okay, so let's look at this. Now, his father, Vijay Mallya, was...
Vijay Mallya, yes.
You come from Bangalore, Faye. Yes. Was, if I'm not too wrong, yeah, was bestowed upon the title of Sir at some point in time. And as far as I have followed Vijay Mallya from my early days of college, because he's a marketing guru at the end of the day, and that's what I also...
No, but what does that have to do with anything?
Don't be in a rush to cut me. So as far as I understand, Vijay Mallya had always maintained a residence, and I don't know if it's more than one residence in London. He used to go there every time, the summer vacations and so on and so forth. So going to London, nobody expects that he's running away. And where is the alarm bell? So, you know, these are when...
hang on. So are you telling me that Vijay Mallya...
It is good to look at the negatives.
Vijay Mallya was the first person to have run off to London
Vijay Mallya had
to avoid prosecution?
Always done to and fro to London.
No. If we are a country who learnt anything from Lalit Modi, who was cooling his heels in London to begin with, then as soon as someone with a real problem, and it was obvious at that time what that problem was, it was 9,000 crore rupees worth of problems, and added to that several other issues that deserved prosecution. If he was going to go off to London, we should have been very concerned about that. So I don't understand what his father's reputation or his reputation has to do with it. The fact that he's a marketing genius, or according to you, Vaibhav Agarwal, should have absolutely no bearing on this conversation. What are you saying?
I'm just saying, I'm just bringing it up because Vijay Mallya and his connection to London is not new, is decades old. So that is point number one. Point number two, from a country's perspective, keeping your view in perspective, now Dr. Mallya has been shouting that I've written letters, I've said, I've spoken to people, blah, blah, blah. Now it's about time that I would request Dr. Mallya from your channel, you know, I hope he's watching it right now, that it's about time that he starts putting those letters in the public domain and let the truth be it. I mean, why are we hiding behind the little finger? You have committed a crime. The government of India has already started prosecuting you in the courts of London. As Arima said rightly, that the courts in London would not just hear you because you're coming from India, they'd hear you because you're coming from India and you have a valid point to make. So the extradition hearing has been happening. So the government of India is already rigorously prosecuting this and they're taking it seriously. But Dr. Mallya should complete his side and should bring out those letters that he's been talking about, writing to ministries, and clarify the facts by substantiating.
I just have one.
Yes, please, Mr. Sundaram. Please, Mr. Sundaram, go ahead.
Faye, can I have one point, Faye?
You know, I'm just a bit puzzled, Faye. I'm not clear on this. Just 1 minute, ma'am. 1 minute, ma'am. Just 1 minute. I have just one sentence, no more. I'm just puzzled about one thing, Faye. Because I heard what Vijay Mallya said now about having made two statements to the finance minister.
Yes.
And what Mr. Mallya in his subsequent clarification seemed to have said, he told the finance minister two things. One, he wanted to settle, and second, that he was going to England. But when I heard the finance minister's statement, the finance minister had only said that Mallya had walked up to him briskly and said, look, he wants to settle the matter. And he told him, well, give it to the bank. And according to the finance minister, said it to him very curtly and said, discuss it to the bank and walk away.
Yes.
So I don't think the finance minister has anywhere said that Mallya told him that he was going to England. So I think we're working on a lot of surmises here and assuming that he was told that Mallya said he was going to England. I'm not clear on this. You could clarify it, if in fact he was or not.
Well,
I think that's what Sanjay Hegde was going on, the fact that the finance minister was told this, but I'm not clear whether he was told this.
Right.
That doesn't seem to come out at all.
Let's
So
play
I just
out
wanted
the
to
finance
check that with
minister's
you.
response. This is Mr. Arun Jaitley, the
It's
finance
just
minister.
political fodder for everyone.
Yeah, let's play that out, please.
I have never given him an appointment, never at my office, never at my residence, nor have I ever offered to meet him. I do remember on one occasion, he misused his privilege as a member of Rajya Sabha. And while I was walking out of the Rajya Sabha to my room, he paced up towards me in the Parliament building and suggested that he was going to make some offer of settlement. I did not even bother to get any detail from him. I curtly told him that he must go and make it to the bankers, because I was fully aware that he had been bluffing on several occasions in the past and had no intention of paying back the bankers' money.
Sanjay Hegde, so really the offer or the information that he was going to London really only came from Vijay Mallya, has not been corroborated by the finance minister. So we'll really, should we really take his word for it?
See, this is the classic he said, she said kind of situation. We have two people. The two people have their respective credibilities for what it is worth. It is for people who will hear both sides to take a call which suits, which better appeals to their judgment. It is also quite possible that Mallya has one recollection of that brief encounter, Mr. Jaitley has another recollection. And it's entirely human, because people's memories are so selective at most times. You sometimes tend to hear only that which you want to hear. And
Sanjay Hegde, why don't you talk about the Dr. Manmohan Singh government, the UPA government aiding and abetting?
May not necessarily be verbatim.
Vijay Mallya.
All right, we've run out of time on this discussion.
The question, sorry, is
why don't we talk about
is Vijay Mallya leaving in 2016?
Mr. Sundaram, Faye, Mr. Sundaram said one important point.
2016, Dr. Manmohan Singh was nowhere on the picture.
That is, the government has been lax. The government has been lax. Government was lax with Mr. Walia. So if that is the case, then the government was very lax with Nirav Modi and Mehul
government, Dr.
And all
Mohammed,
the four, Mr.
Shama,
Mallya,
the UPA government, I cast
have been all associated with
Sonia
have
Gandhi
always been associated
and Rahul
with
Gandhi.
Somehow, unfortunately for my viewers,
can you
it all
tell us
boils
whether
down to this. Now, let's be honest about the fact that governments have been lax. Not just this current government, but the one before that as well. All of that 9,000 crore rupees was consecutively borrowed by Vijay Mallya during the UPA regime. He was offering things like furniture and brand value as collateral and taking loans that he had no business being allowed to take. He obviously soon found himself in a position where he didn't have the ability to pay back. He was also functioning in an aviation industry that was being watched and monitored very closely by the UPA government as well. They first dug the pit that the country fell into and now blame the current government for not being able to get us out of there. Consecutive governments and lax behaviour by consecutive governments have brought us to this point. Does Vijay Mallya belong in jail? Beyond a shadow of doubt. Should he be sent back to India to face prosecution? Beyond a shadow of doubt. In fact, as we speak, Arthur Road Jail has built a fancy jail cell for him. It has 5 ventilators and 3 windows. It has a built-in bathroom and toilet. It is 300 square feet, perhaps larger than a lot of the colis that entire families live in the city of Mumbai. To convince the courts in the UK that there will not be a human rights violation if he were to be sent back. So Vijay Mallya might drop all kinds of hints to the reporters who are standing outside of the courtroom in London to cause confusion. But as a country, we should be absolutely clear about the fact that this man belongs in a jail cell. Whether it has 5 windows or none at all, in jail he must go. Thanks for watching.